All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and with that, ask everyone to stand where you're at and join us in our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and can I get a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda as stated?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Fishman, second by Mr. Loya. Any discussion? All right, with all our votes tonight, we'll do roll call. So Mr. Martin is a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit? Mrs. Sundit. Hold on.
Yes.
Ah, there you go. Thank you. Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
And Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Wood is not able to join us tonight, so don't want anyone to think anything other than I won't be calling her name because she's not here. So with that, we will move into the community open forum. I don't see any requests. Tom or Pearl, are you aware of any?
I see none.
All right, excellent. We will, just because it is virtual, a little bit different. If for some reason one shows up later, we'll be glad to address it as we're able to, but we'll go ahead and move into the action portion of this. Pearl, one question before we get too far into this. When it comes down to the items for discussion and action, the resolutions, do those have to be read? Pearl, you're on mute if you're talking.
I believe they do, Andy.
Pearl said they do not because they are posted.
Perfect.
Oh,
Good.
303 is Pearl.
Oh, that's Pearl. Okay.
Hold on.
Okay, and Kathy just asked if one of those numbers is our student rep. Do we know?
No, I don't see the student rep. I'm looking through just to make sure. But there's no other phone numbers that are unrecognized. So I'll simply say if the student rep is here, if they want to put something in the chat, then Tom, I assume you can make them panelists. So.
Yeah, and I also, for Pearl, I have it where she can talk.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, now
Yes,
I can
we
hear
can.
you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Pearl. So we don't have to read the resolutions. That's great. That'll because they're rather lengthy.
No.
So that's good.
Good.
All right. With that, I will make a motion to accept item D. D in its entirety. Personnel. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Loy. Any discussion on D or any comments from administration on D before we vote? All right. Mr. Martin is a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
And Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to accept item E, the consent agenda in its entirety?
Motion.
I'll make.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hoyt. I think I heard the second by Mrs. Fishman. Any discussion on E? All right, since there are none, Mr. Martin is a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yeah.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Loyer?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
And Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
Thank you. And with that, I would like to express our appreciation for the donations to the art department and the Millard Hawk Elementary School, and Pearl will a thank you letter from the board on behalf of those donations, but very much appreciated.
I will do that.
Thanks, Pearl. All right, we move into the special presentations, and Tom, I'll let you turn it over or however you want to handle that one.
Yep. So we'll have a spotlight on Brewerton Elementary. I made Brent owner of this, so he can just take it from here.
All right. Good deal. Can you all hear me? All right.
We can.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and this is going to make Connie's screen stop sharing. And I'm going to go here. And I do. I don't know why it's backfeeding like that, but okay.
If everybody else can mute themselves when Brent goes, that might cut off the interference.
All right. So I have a couple of, well, 3 really awesome special area teachers in this building. And I know at the last presentation when Amanda Veal addressed you, she introduced maybe a little insight as to what the classroom looks like, the regular ed classroom and the virtual classroom. I wanted to try to fill in the gaps with the special area teachers and what that looks like on our Wednesdays. And I also have a teacher in our school who's attending now some grad classes up at Oswego to get her CAS, and she wants to get into administration. She would love to fine-tune her presentation skills, and I would love for her to take over and do this presentation for you. So I'm going to give you to Jess Hill, formerly Jess Lynn, for those of you who may know her, and we're going to just switch spots, and she's going to take it from here. All right.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, perfect. So good evening, Mr. Calabufo, Mr. Martin, and members of the board. Tonight our focus, as Mr. Bowden said, is on special areas and virtual Wednesdays. Okay, for the 2020 to 2021 special area schedule, students in school will receive 1 in-person PE class every week and 1 virtual PE class on virtual Wednesdays. In addition to the virtual PE class on Wednesdays, they will have either art or music, depending on the grade level and the month. There is a 2-month rotation for art and music. So for example, in 4th grade, for the months of September and October, students were logging in on Wednesdays for PE and music. And then for the months of November and December, they will log in for PE and for art. Okay, this year, art is completely virtual. Mrs. Staley sends materials home to students prior to the lessons. She does schedule live Zoom lessons for every grade level, but she also uploads the lessons for students to access on Canvas at any time. Students are taught to upload their artwork to Canvas, and assignments are uploaded for students to access at any time. Every special area teacher made a Zoom video to help parents and students navigate their Canvas pages. In this video, you will see Mrs. Staley guide her parents and students through her Canvas page.
Hi everybody, what we're going to do here in this video is I just want to go over real quick how to navigate my page. Currently I'm in teacher view, so this is what I see, but I can click on student view here, and even though it has this pink little outline, it's actually what you guys can see. So when you click on my art page, you'll see this cute little picture, and you can just scroll down past that. And down here, I have buttons, and all of these buttons take you to different links on my page. The one right here takes you to art classes and assignments. If you click on that, it takes you right to our projects here. This example is a first grade class, but if it's second or kindergarten or any other grade, it will be the same. So the assignments will be in order here, and then you'll also notice I have the dates as well. So the dates are on here and it's titled. So if you ever are like which one, just pay attention to the date there and you're all set. You can home button over here, and that gets you back to my main page. And then you're right back to the beginning again, where you have options to pick other.
Okay. Music this year is also completely virtual, and materials are sent home to students prior to Mrs. Love's lessons. Mrs. Love has taught students to record themselves in Nearpod and upload the videos to her. She also teaches in Zoom and uploads the lessons for students to access at any time. They're also able to access the assignments in Canvas. In this video, you will see a virtual music lesson with Mrs. Love.
Some of you, I can tell, practiced with the rhythm that was written out. That was amazing. Okay, so here we go. Let's clap it together. And remember, this little hat is 2 rests. It's 2 beats of rests. Okay, nice job. Here we go. Ready? Don't forget to stop when you get to the end. Ready? Go. Fuzzy, Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy, Wuzzy had no hair. Fuzzy, Wuzzy wasn't fuzzy, was he? Did you rest all 3 beats at the end? Try it one more time. Ready?
Okay, in virtual PE with Mr. Strader. On the left, you can see a picture of Mr. Strader modeling a dance move for students for this particular lesson. And in the video, you will see that he has pre-recorded himself dancing to encourage students to do the same at home.
Moves. If you are on the side with the floss, you're going to do the floss. If you're on the other side, I don't even know what this one's called. I'm just going to call it a little elbow dance. That's the dance you're going to do on that side. You have 10 seconds. Ready, set, and go. Okay, 10 seconds. Here we go. I should see everybody moving on their cameras. Good job, guys. Seeing a lot of elbow dancing and flossing. I love it. Awesome.
We're hoping to get Mr. Bowden down there one day to try those dance moves. Okay. And in school PE, we'll see that in this video that students have to maintain 12 feet in distance. They do have an X to reference on the floor, and they stay at that spot for the lesson. And you will see some new creative ways that Mr. Strader is still making lessons in school fun and exciting. Oops. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Strader, Mrs. Staley, and Mrs. Love. You are all doing a wonderful job, and we appreciate all that you do. At this time, we will do our best to answer any of your questions.
Well, first of all, thanks for the presentation. I guess my question would be just what, all of it looks great, by the way, and I think you're making the best of a less than desirable situation. I guess the question is what can we do to support long-term, and also, what's the biggest challenge that I don't mean struggling to overcome, but that we're addressing right now? What is top of mind as far as the biggest challenge yet to overcome?
The biggest challenge I think participation at home, but it does, if you could see in the video, it looks like a lot of parents are able to access the Canvas pages, which has helped them get on. At first, that was a little challenging, and that's why the special area teachers made those videos. So I think really accessing the lessons, but I think that's become better after every teacher made either directions or a Zoom video to help parents navigate. And the attendance does seem to be better with that.
So that's great. So, and this may be a question more for Tom and staff, I'm not sure, and it may not be something you can answer now, but are we tracking, or do we have the ability to start tracking kind of that participation? So when they are remote, and I'm talking beyond the elementary school as well, but you know, for instance, one of the things I've heard a lot is that, for instance, my daughter was on a class, and the entire time she was in the class, she's the only one, sorry, there was one other person that was participating via video, right, where there was some kind of engagement. And I know sometimes there's technical challenges and all that, but do we have any sort of ability or reporting on participation by grade level, school, class, anything like that, Tom?
Irene, I'll let you answer that.
So there are analytics that we can access through Canvas. I just want to address the connectivity issue that we're sometimes fighting. So we have a lot of kids with out internet or kids with unstable internet. You know, they have it, but it just can't sustain what we're trying to do. So I've been sending home some information when people ask me. I'm asking parents to disconnect other devices from Wi-Fi, disconnect your phones, your televisions, your gaming devices, anything that could be drawing on your Wi-Fi that you don't even realize, right, when your kids are doing school. When push comes to shove, I have recommended to teachers to actually ask kids to shut off their cameras because the cameras are drawing a lot of bandwidth. And I would rather have you engaged just with your voice than not to have you engaged at all. So teachers, it's kind of a trial and error thing. We still are working with our families to get them hotspots and get those hotspots working. But a lot of times they don't even have cell service where we're sending these hotspots. So we're trying to bring more kids in, which you're aware of. So those are some of the challenges we have with kids and engagement.
Irena, which is
in terms of the IT department.
And it's not just isolated to Canvas, because I have other friends that are superintendents. They're on Google Enterprise.
Right.
They've done the same thing.
What we've created is we have this down detector website that Adam put together that has all of our major tools on it. And teachers can look at that and say, is Clever down? Is Canvas down? Is Zoom, Google, and there's one other, the CineRic. So we're watching the status pages of all those tools so that any time that we start to get reports, we can see, is it just us or is the country, world going down in terms of these things? So we have a way to monitor it quickly.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the board about the presentation or?
You were originally asking wasn't necessarily can they connect or not. Can we tell if students are there using video or not? Because I know a lot of the teachers, probably the biggest issue that they have with the 100% remote is they miss the kids, right? So seeing the kids' faces and stuff they like. Granted, for some people that overload with the video coming is an issue, but right. Are there stats that can tell if people are just dialed in audio or if they're all still doing video?
I'd have to check on that. I'm not sure that it distinguishes between video or not video. It just checks if the kid logged in and how long the student was logged in to Canvas. But I can get an answer for you on that one.
Yeah, and
okay.
I'm
probably less. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's less important than teachers' feedbacks. Are teachers feeling as if the kids are connecting with them or not? And how widespread is the feeling that either they really are connecting or they still feel like they're connecting?
I can answer that from the high school level. I've had several conversations. And the last one was just recently with a business teacher and two business teachers, and they said it's pretty much 100%. Students they know when to log in. They're having great participation. So again, that's just what I had asked at the high school. I can't answer that for the elementary or middle school right now.
And I don't want to put her on the spot, but Mrs. Hill, I couldn't tell if you were trying to say something or not.
No, I was going to say that we are getting good participation. You could see in Mr. Strader's screens that everyone was on camera because it would be blank, of course, if they weren't. So he is getting good participation. And I think that it is easier to get on Canvas now and parents are able to access that. So we're seeing higher numbers in participation. I'm not a virtual teacher this year, but I'm definitely seeing my class, my students are on at the right times when they need to be when they are home.
And I can tell you from the superintendent's standpoint that now that we're getting a lot of districts in Oswego County that have had to shut down for 2 days or 2 weeks, which we have several districts right now in our county that have had experiences within a middle school or an elementary, and they're shutting down for the 14 days. They're asking me if they can get in contact with Arena. We're a little bit ahead of the game when it comes to distance learning than a lot of districts, especially in Onondaga County. So it was something that nobody really wanted to have to do. We're starting to get really good at it. So if we become a orange or red zone and we can't have any in-person learning at all, and it's going to be this way, or if the governor just deems the entire state, I feel at this point the teachers are just doing such a phenomenal job putting lessons, quality lessons out there on their Canvas. I've had the parents that were really frustrated over the summer. Several of them now have contacted me just to say it's only fair that I say that the teachers are doing an amazing job. My kids know when to log in. They know what's expected of them. And the teachers are doing a really good job giving formative assessments and then giving feedback to their kids. So while distance learning will never be perfect, and it's definitely never going to replace the in-person experience of what our teachers can provide in that environment, I have to say hats off to our teachers for really pulling this off.
Any other questions or comments? All right, great. Thank you, Mrs. Hill. Thank you, Mr. Bowden.
Thank you.
And Andy, they had a bunch of them on as attendees. The people that you saw were all watching this as attendees.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
so-
actually doesn't show all of them. So you did see a big group, but there are actually more that it only shows a certain number unless he's clicking through to see.
Yeah.
Great. Well done, everyone.
Hey,
Yes, thank you again.
hey, Andy, I got one question.
Yeah.
Why is it 12 feet instead of 6? Not that it matters, just kind of curious.
You're talking about in the
The gym.
The PE.
the
yeah.
gym class?
That's
Are you asking why as far, I mean, so it's the regulation because that's,
It is.
yeah, because
it's
Cuomo
12
has
feet.
said that in physical exercise or in music, that it has to be 12 feet.
Okay.
Oh, COVID is far more prevalent in PE and music.
Yeah, it's much denser. Yeah, I know that. It's a fact.
which it is kind of a great point you brought up, Michael, because when our band had to be outside, they had to be 12 feet.
Outside.
Yeah, outside. And when
Good.
soccer
Good.
players were playing, they could be right next to each other. So it is,
Well,
it's
soccer
very,
players, they don't get affected.
yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, Cuomo knows this.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably no surprise when we get into the open board reports. I'm going to ask the board some questions about this. We're going to talk about this some more. So it'll be interesting.
Andy, I would like to just make a last comment to, is it Jen? I'm sorry, the name of the presenter?
Jess Hill.
Jessica. Yeah. Jess.
Yeah. Very, very nice job. I wouldn't say you need practice doing presentations. So nice job.
Right.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm getting there.
Any interest in Brewerton principal? I'm just kidding, Mr. Bowden.
That would be a dream someday.
I expect a union letter tomorrow. I'm just kidding. Mr. Kolabupo is cringing right now. So this
This is good. This is all good.
Yeah, I agree, Tim. Great job, and really appreciate. I know that the community or maybe people that sometimes look in on these meetings, and frankly, board members in the past have expressed, do we really need these spotlights on schools? I think it's really great to just kind of see what each school is doing and the different ways they're adapting. And I particularly love this year the different aspects that we're seeing. So I appreciate it and looking forward to the next one. So.
Well, Andy, on that note, if I may, our meetings aren't 4 or 5 hours long at this point. So having these demonstrations and these highlights by the schools is great because it doesn't add very much time. Now, if we're having a 4 or 5 hour meeting, that might be a different. But
Yeah.
since we're better at it today, I think this is awesome.
Agreed. All right, well, with that, we're going to move into our next presentation, which the board received, I believe everyone via email, and it's about Juul litigation. Tom, I know it's not noted in here. Nothing about the memorandum that I see would be confidential, correct? So I'm just wondering if we can post that when we do the final minutes and stuff. I think the public, unless there's something I'm missing.
No, absolutely. I'm looking at it right here. There's nothing on here that can't be posted. So when we do the final minutes, we'll put it on there.
All right. So with that, Tom, I'll leave it to you to kind of intro the whole topic and what we're talking about, and then we'll open up for discussion. But I do want to start just by saying that in reading it, it would seem that the timeline is that by February, no later than February, we need to give our law firm direction on whether or not we plan to participate. And so based on that, I would just think if the board wants to discuss tonight, and depending on their feeling, maybe at not the next meeting, but the one after that, we probably ought to make our final decision so that we aren't pushing up against that February deadline.
Andy, did you want me to just say, like, number one, what is it? I mean, do you want to do that, or do we not need to because the board already had it?
I think just to you can do the recap, I can do the recap, but I just think for the public, so they understand what we're talking about, and then we'll just have a board discussion.
I'll just say what the memorandum is.
Yep.
The memorandum is intended to provide answers to frequently asked questions by school district administrators and Board of Education regarding multi-district litigation against Juul, J-U-U-L, Laboratories, Inc., that is currently pending in the Northern District of California. That's the lawsuit. What is the lawsuit about? In the lawsuit, the plaintiffs are alleging that the largest vaping manufacturing company in the world, Juul Labs, Inc., fraudulently and intentionally marketed its products to children. Initially discovered in the lawsuit is revealed that Juul Labs was, in fact, intentionally marketing their product to children through social media, online advertising, and even children television networks, such as Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. Through this advertising, Juul Labs allegedly misled children to believe that their product was not harmful when, in fact, e-cigarettes contain 10 times the amount of nicotine than traditional cigarettes. In addition, it is alleged that Juul Labs further marketed their product to children by creating flavored e-cigarettes such as Fruit Medley, creme brulee, and mango. Despite being warned years ago that a majority of their consumers were children, Juul Labs had continued to market and sell their flavored pods. To make matters worse, it is believed that Juul Labs intentionally made it easier for children to bypass the legal age requirement for purchasing the product through its online distribution channels. It's basically the gist of it.
And so Central Square as a district, and this board being the fiduciary of that would be the ones making the decision. We'll need to decide whether or not we are going to participate in what is basically a class action suit. There's no cost and no risk, frankly, to the district. There's only, quote, a financial part that could come in to the district. And so I guess I'll start the discussion by saying, in general, I'm not a fan of this sort of litigation, but my personal views are different than my role on the board, and I think we'd be not doing our due diligence and what we're supposed to be doing if we don't participate in this. I do also think that it's fairly egregious what they did and what they spell out in the lawsuit. So I would have no issue with Central Square participating in it, and I'll let that start the discussion.
By participating, is there any liability that shows up on our doorstep?
I was told no.
Yeah, that was the first thing I had asked Bethany from our law firm as well, Mike, and the fact that bond is, I don't mean soliciting, but they sent us a letter recapping it, a memorandum, right? And so I think if there were liability, they would they'd be running from it first. So I don't think so.
Oh, fair enough. I asked the question only to get it out there.
Yep. Any other questions? And very specifically, would anyone, realizing that we're not going to vote at the next meeting, but the one after that, does anyone have concerns or would be opposed to this? Questions that we need to get to our law firm to have answered before we get to that point?
No, this is Tim McCarthy. My only comment would be at the end of the day, again, I guess this one is the glass is half full. I just don't see the payoff as being anything significant, so I would like to throw that out there. I just, at the end of the day, I don't think Central Square specifically will get, millions of dollars. So for what it's worth. And I am not a suit happy person either. I think we've come too far with that stuff, but I would support it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm with you, Tim. I don't expect anything major from this. And if there were even, and I mean, when I say even, if there were a $500 quote, enrollment fee into the class action, I would not be for it. But being that there's no risk, I don't see a particular downside. But I agree with you.
The only thing I did notice as far as costs is what I read was maybe 10 hours of somebody in the district's time, which is not significant, but I would just want to clarify that it's only going to be 10 hours and that's not going to lead to, 100 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
That was going to be my only point, is just to keep in mind that we are going to have to submit information because there will be discovery, and so there will be interrogatories and discovery demands and things. And so being a plaintiff, we will have to respond. Now, bond will draft those responses, but anytime they get a request, we're going to have to get the information for them to put in there. So again, it could be insignificant, it could be 10 hours, but depending on how this goes, there's a lot of paper shot each way in these kinds of things. So, whatever money comes out of it, a large portion, they said they'll reduce their fee, but a large portion of it will go back to the attorneys for their fees for doing exactly that. But that doesn't, as Tim said, that doesn't necessarily mean that the time spent by the district to get that information to them would be compensated unless there was a significant settlement with respect to the class. So.
And that's a good point. And so it's part of the public record, and the public can be aware that while there is no cost, and I'm just going to use a figure just to make the math simple, but if Central Square were to receive, for instance, $10,000 in some settled lawsuit, then the head firm in this would take, in all likelihood, it's going to take longer than a year. So I'm just going to go with a higher number, 25%. So 2,500 will go to the head legal firm. Central Square would then retain the 7,500. Whatever that final number is, they would take 20% of it within the first year, and I think 25 after that. So.
Well, so typically, and every class action is different, and I did not see where they're going to venue this, in which state, or whether, it'd probably be federal court, considering the fact that it's going to be all over the country. But what typically will happen is they'll get the settlement amount, and that will be, that they're going to settle with the class. So say it's $10 million, then the attorneys take their cut off of that. And then basically the attorneys kind of put in requests for class members as to what they're entitled to out of what's left. And that's how a lot of times these like credit card class actions and stuff like that, you end up getting a notice in the mail that you're entitled to $75.36. Because at the end of the day, depending on the number of districts that join the class action, the money that comes to them, the more districts there are, the less money they'll get, because at the end of the day, usually the settlement is about what it would have been whether there was 150 districts or there was 300 districts. The only thing that'll change that is, like I said, it did say in the memo that the damages they're alleging are the costs that the school districts have incurred thus far and anticipate in the future. Yeah. And so a lawsuit, you have to prove your damages. And so that's where that time and money and effort put in by the district will make the difference. Because if we can establish that we've spent $10,000 and, expect to spend another $50,000 in the coming 5 to 10 years for those vape detectors and things like that, whatever those numbers are, you have to put those in and prove them. And so typically what would happen is then they'll take that pie, if there's $7.5 million left, and the districts have all put in proof that there's, you know, $20 million of damages, they'll just take the percentage typically and say, okay, well, there's only, you know, 40% of the money left, so you get 40% of your damages. Kind of, I mean, it varies from class to class, but this, you know, that's typically how it'll go.
Is there a primary litigant in this lawsuit?
There's always a class representative. I don't know who it is.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah, so Pearl, if you can note that would definitely be one of the questions to get from Bethany, is who is the primary litigant, lead in this? And then, Tom, I would like, and Pearl, this as well, is just what specifically do we need to do? So for instance, is this a resolution? Is this a board vote? Are we simply giving Tom and administration our verbal cue? I don't know what the legal process is for this one.
I asked Bethany that, and it was just talk to the board. It wasn't a specific vote or anything, but I will follow up with her tomorrow. And if any other board members have any other questions, shoot me. If you want to shoot me and Andy Martin your questions, Andy and I can have a conversation with Bethany tomorrow to have her answer any of those.
Yeah, and I just want to point out for the board, whether it's required or not, like I think is incredibly bad process for us to ever enter a suit without an official vote of the board. So we'll be doing that even if it's not required, but I'm just interested what is required. So.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and Tom, I mean, to the extent, again, I don't typically handle class actions. So, you know, any of the questions that have come so far, Bethany should certainly address those as well. I just, the few class actions that I've been part of, that's typically how they've gone. So.
And to the earlier question, Christy, it's Northern District of California, but it doesn't say.
Is it federal? Is it a district? So Northern District is probably federal.
Yeah. All right, so for our next meeting, then we'll kind of get updates as far as the information, lead litigant, the actual process and everything, and then we can discuss it more if needed, but then the meeting after that, Tom, we can take whatever official action we need. And the trial isn't even set to start until a year from January. So,
oh yeah, that's not likely either.
Yeah, most of us will be long gone off the board before there's any movement from this. So,
yeah.
All right. Any other comments before we move into item G? All right, so moving into item G, unfinished business, just upcoming Board of Education presentations. I think it's Connie. Connie, could you just click on that link for a second for the upcoming presentations? Let's see. So we don't have anything scheduled for the next one. Tom, I don't know. There were a couple things I was just interested in if the board is interested in, and then getting them scheduled. One would be, you know, with everything that's going on, and we'll talk about this more in open reports, but just kind of the social emotional part of this. So for instance, what I'm particularly interested in hearing from is from our kind of school psychologists and counseling is what are we seeing at the elementary level, which is in person at least several days, versus those that are fully remote. I think it's important for the board to understand that, but I also know that it's fairly early on in the school year and that takes time and they're focused on more important things. So you don't have to commit to anything now, but unless there's an objection from the board, I'd like you to just let us know when we could maybe have a discussion on that. But I do not want it to, you know, take time away from priority stuff. So.
Okay.
All right, thanks for that, Connie. You can head on back now, and then that does lead us into open discussion, and I'm going to start that open discussion, which is, you know, I think most we're certainly, it's not like we are one solid opinion on how everything with COVID and remote learning and everything is being handled, but I'm simply going to say that I would like to kind of take the board's pulse. I think we need to take a firmer stance, and so I would like us to look at doing an actual resolution. I think there's enough data coming out now And report after report is saying that for the districts that have gone full in person, and again, this isn't an indictment on our district, right? We have space requirements. It's all about 36 data points that allow us or not to go in person. So that's not the discussion. But those that have been able to go in person, the data is clearly showing that it is not some massive outbreak of COVID. It is not some massive detriment to the community. And in fact, more and more and more are jumping on to the side of, while there is, quote, a risk, I think there's a greater risk in what they are forcing us to do. So my conversation is about, I would like us to think about doing an actual resolution that gets sent to the governor and all our representatives of Central Square saying, we are very specifically asking to remove the restrictions to allow us to go back to full in-person learning, allow local board of educations that have been elected to do their job. So I'll drop that and let you guys give me your feedback.
This is Tim. I 150% support that, Andy. If you go back to August, I made a statement in the last 2 board meetings, I think in August, that I believe kids should be back in school at all costs. I have stood steadfast in that, and I remain steadfast in that. The risk of getting COVID is far greater, in my humble opinion, than any other, or less. The risk of getting COVID is less than some of the alternatives that's happening to our student population every day that they're not in school. So 150%, I think will it go anywhere? Who knows? But I think somebody has got to grow a set and get after the governor on this stuff.
Anyone opposed? And when I say opposed, simply the idea that, I can work with Bethany for the draft language and stuff, but it obviously would be further conversation at the next meeting. But I would like us to Christy's point earlier, there's always a lead in this. And we did this before. We had other boards adopt when we did a resolution about the kind of ridiculous mandates and hoops that were put in front of certifying bus drivers. And we got other districts to adopt that same resolution. And so I'd like to go to Oswego County School Boards, New York State School Board, Central New York, all that, and see if we can get some sort of momentum. Because right now it feels like we are the boulder being pushed, not doing the pushing. So
Right. I feel like we're the voices not being heard at the same time. So
Kathy, I agree. I think it would be great if those restrictions got lifted. However, we can't address only that, because if the county health departments are still gonna then shut down or quarantine large numbers of people based on, one person being in the classroom and everybody that was in that same kid's classroom along with their teachers and their siblings and whatever else.
So Kathy, if I hear you correctly, then you're saying, in addition to loosening the restrictions or eliminating them, you're saying that we also need to address what he's mandating with respect to the local health departments and things like that.
I feel like maybe she might have had a service freeze up, but
Yeah,
I'll fill the dead time by saying that I agree. To me, what I envision is it's a resolution calling for the governor to allow local school boards to do what they're supposed to do, but also at the same time, it is stop giving more credence and more importance to a restaurant, a bar, a bowling alley, and everything else than you do to kids getting social, emotional, and educational services. We ought to be essential services, period, end of story. That's my stance, but.
Agreed. And Tom, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a comment in the chat.
Is there an opportunity to pursue additional hours on in-person days? So, well, we talked about this, and right now with everything that we have set up where those restrictions that you guys are just talking about are in place, the teachers are there from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock with students, and then they have their things in their contract where they have lunch. They have their planning period, and then they're jumping on, if it's an AA, they're jumping on with their BB students. So I've answered that. I've had hundreds of parents ask me that question. How can we add to the hours on that? There's a give and take. So when they're then jumping on with the students that didn't have that direct instruction, they're working asynchronously, that didn't see their teachers, there's going to be less of that time then. And so where you have some parents asking this to do that for them, then it's like a Rubik's Cube you turn. And then the parents that are really liking that level of engagement, rather than the 3 days of waiting until they can have in person again, that's going to give a little bit. We are bringing back right now, as of today, all of our elementary students with an IEP. So all of our special education students, the elementary, are getting 4 days a week. We are looking in that direction to go. Middle school, we've just increased more students on the Wednesday, and then on the 9th, we're going to be bringing back more students at the middle school 4 days a week. So we are making that push, and we're really stretching it. At the elementary, we were only bringing in no more than 12 students. So the way that it fell, it could have been 12 on one day, it could have been 8 on the other, depending on which parents wanted distance learning only. Now we have rooms where there's 16 students at the elementary and 15 on the other day. And so we are pushing literally the limit about putting the circles of the 6 feet. So within the past month, we have made the push to bring back more students safely with the guidelines that we still have imposed upon us. They definitely are measuring. When we had the situation at the high school, the first person that the health department called wasn't me, it was Paul Brissett, to go measure 9 classrooms to make sure of what the square footage was, and then they wanted to know the maximum capacity that was in those rooms, so they themselves could then do the measurements that we weren't building rooms beyond that 6 foot. So,
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to clarify, and I apologize because I got kind of waylaid mid-conversation there. So if you covered it, my bad. But I thought it was more around, the question is around more hours on the existing in-person days. And if you covered that, I missed it. So that's
yeah, that's the whole problem right there. Because if we added more in person, then when those teachers still have to be able to have a lunch and still have to have their planning period, but then they jump when those kids leave at 1 o'clock. That's when the teachers have their lunch. They don't have any breaks. We've maximized that time when the students are in person. So when they leave to get on the buses, that's when the teachers have their lunch and then jump on online for their BB kids. So to give more of that in person is then going to take away from the BB kids who are at home that whole day working on things. And again, we didn't want to have it where kids would be in for 2 days and then not have anything completely for 3 days go by. So if it's a Monday, Tuesday kid, they're not there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday until the Monday. And so, but again, it was Mrs. Mayers that asked that question. We are continuously looking at this. Aaron Phillips has been working round the clock trying to figure out ways to maximize that in person, but also not hurting what has actually been working for a lot of parents. I know there's parents that are frustrated, they want more, but there are some parents that had the opportunity to, their kids fell into a certain category of special education. They're like, no, it really is actually working for us. I know most parents don't feel that way. If they're given the opportunity, we know statistically they want to have the kids in. We totally see that. And when those guidelines change of the 6-person rule, we will do that.
So Tom, if I can just comment with respect to that, I think it matters too that there's a varying level of engagement. I don't want to say engagement, ability and or, just the way that they're scheduling and planning the classes. Because I have 2 students in elementary school and their teachers do it very differently. One of those students is literally on the computer for synchronous education on his virtual days. And he's working alongside the students in class. The teacher basically has him on the computer from 9:30 until 11:30 doing ELA, math, alongside the students that are sitting in the classroom, and vice versa. When he's in the classroom, the students at home are in the classroom essentially just via video. And so that afternoon, there's like a 2 o'clock conference, which would take place at home. You would think that would just be the in-school students that would be on that, but it's my impression from being in the room at times when that's going on, that the entire class is on. So the kids are home from school that were in school, and then the virtual kids that have been home all day, they're all still on there. And it just fluctuates, where they're being educated, essentially. And so
you're 100% correct, Christy. There's a learning gap right now.
Right,
there are some
right.
teachers that feel very comfortable, and they are doing it synchronously with the kids at home and in their classroom. We are providing professional development on that. And again, we are so far ahead than the other school districts. But
sure.
it's letting those teachers feel comfortable. If that is the direction that we go in, then that would significantly, like you said, allow us to have more in-person time.
Absolutely. And that's all I was saying. So for that teacher, that particular teacher, it probably wouldn't be a big deal to have those in-school students be there all day on those days, as opposed to giving that teacher the 2 hours without students in there to just teach completely virtually. But I have another student who it's more what we expected in the beginning. When they're in school, they're getting taught, and there's 20-minute little sessions where the virtual kids are in the classroom too. But for the most part, they're doing everything on their own at home on their virtual days. With the direction and instruction from the teacher in the afternoon when those in-school students are no longer there. And so it kind of depends. And so in a perfect world, in another year of this, which hopefully we don't have, maybe it would be possible to do something like what she's requesting. But at this point, with the varying learning curve with respect to, the teachers and things like that, I think it'd be very difficult to do that within the contract limits that we have currently.
Yeah, and I also think we'd be remiss not to mention the fact, like, bringing back all of the students, right? Even by going from 12 to 16, I'm not saying that me, Tom Kelwolf, is personally afraid of COVID. What I'm afraid, and I've said this from the beginning, I don't know if it's more being afraid, but just being aware of this broad stroke, extremely cautious approach from the health departments, where if you just turn on the news, you see there was one positive case, and then they quarantined 96 people as a result of that. So it's kind of both. The more students we bring back, I guarantee you, we're going to start to see more issues. We had another high school student that was positive today. Again, not in person in our school. So that nothing skipped a beat there. But it's good. That's going to happen, and people just need to be aware of that. The more students that we're bringing back, it is just going to be a reality that we're increasing that chance that any one of those kids, whether they got it, their close contact happened at home and it never even happened in with school or whatnot, we're going to have more. But to your point, Christy, and to Tim and to Andy, that we could be looking at this for the remainder of the year. We could be looking at starting the next year. None of us really seem to know where, the governor is going with this. So I think it's important that people like Megan Mayers know that this is a fluid situation. We are looking at all of the things that we can and can't do. I just want it to go on record for all the parents that may watch this or watch it later. If your child is struggling at home and they don't fit into that category of the special ed student and whatnot, I still want them to have the conversation with the teacher and then with the principal to see what are those things that we are able to do. If the first phone call is to me, the superintendent, I'm simply going to have listen to the conversation, but then I'm going to call the principal to say, have the conversation with the teacher. Are we doing everything that we can to support the kid who doesn't have an IEP but that is just struggling at home? Are we taking care of that? But again, at the same time, we are pushing the limit of what we have right now with bringing as many kids back that legally we can.
Yeah, and I do want to, as I said, I've seen two very different things, but both of the teachers, both of my students anyway, are doing well enough. Obviously I'd much rather have them in school and getting the full experience of the education that they should be getting, which includes socialization, and rule following and all of those types of things. But at the same time, I think they're doing a great job. We just had open house last week at A. Cole, and I was impressed by both the presentations by the teacher, and shared the fact that I am impressed by the synchronous education that's going on, and the way that the students have adapted, but the teachers, that they've got to get the buy-in, and at least for my two students, the teachers have gotten the buy-in by the students. So.
And I think I'm glad you said that, and it's important that everybody knows we've dodged a lot of bullets right now. We've had a significant amount of parents that have actually tested positive whose children are in-person learners at the elementary who have not. And they're quarantined when the parents are quarantined. And we've, to I think it was Tim or Andy's point, that has not spread into the schools. So there have been a lot of people that have said they thought there was going to be community spread in schools, and there hasn't been community spread. And that's the Democrats and the Republicans have both at least looked at the data, and we haven't seen that. And I think a big part of that does go to the fact that the teachers have been really good. When I was looking through the windows in the classrooms, you see those kids are 6 feet apart, those masks come off. But anytime a teacher comes into any of that zone to assess students, those masks come back on. And they seem to be getting pretty good at that. But again, what worries me as the superintendent is just how quickly we could lose staff to quarantine. We did at the high school, boom, it was 10 of them. 11 actually. And that's why you're looking at Oswego County right now and you're seeing a lot of the districts having to shut down for 2 weeks. A big part of that was because the shared staff, where they just lost 15 teachers, 20 teachers with one student testing positive. So I just wanted to throw that in there too.
Well, right. And I know that you were concerned, Tom, about the bus drivers and attending the meetings. And, it had just occurred to me the other day and I forgot to mention it to you, but to the extent that they are, I know they have that meeting room and things like that. And I assume that they're not having, their normal morning kind of gathering where they sit and chit chat with each other, or at least
Correct.
maintaining distancing. But as you said, maintaining distancing isn't enough. They'll still quarantine the whole group if they've been in contact with each other. So, hopefully, because that's certainly a big concern in our district with respect to the bus drivers. So,
yeah, a lot of teachers that used to go in the rooms and even eat together are being more aware. Because a lot of our teachers have spouses that work in other districts that have been quarantined a lot already. So they realize if they're in their bubble, stay in that bubble. And I'll be honest with you, I feel bad for them to have to do that because the social piece, even for adults, is huge. But when it comes down to lack of substitutes, it's what could really shut our in-person learning down. And I want to keep growing our numbers of in-person, not have to shut us down. And I take the calls right up to about 9 o'clock at night from both health departments, Oswego County and Onondaga County, because these cases and the tracing of the cases that they do, but we got to supply them with the rosters of the sports teams and the buses with their phone numbers. It's quite the process.
right. And the last thing that I want to say, it's kind of related to this is, again, kudos to the teachers for adapting and overcoming, but also for keeping up positive spirit, an optimistic outlook with respect to the rest of the year. It was on Facebook, but I was just on a couple of days ago and saw a video posted that a group of teachers got together did it in their own time for entertainment purposes, put together a dance video, Halloween themed last Friday. And again, it kind of, I think it's helpful for, at least this was high school, but for the high school students to be able to see things that their teachers may or may not have done if they were walking the halls of the building. So, kudos to them for taking time to do that.
Yep. Mrs. Fishman, anything else as far as for you for open forum? All right. Any rest of the board, any topics or any discussion points you'd like to bring up?
Just one question for me, and it may have already been addressed previously, so pardon me, but how's the whole snow day, school delays, how's that all getting played into this, considering the fact that the preschoolers are there every day and stuff like that? So how's that all working out?
Yep. So we are going to have regular snow days. So we built in 5 emergency days. They will be regular if it's a snow day. It's an actual snow day. I've had conversations with Lynn Dowler on possibly like what an MOA could look like if we go beyond the 5. So then that way, families wouldn't be cutting into their vacation time. Teachers wouldn't be cutting into their vacation time, because if you use your 5, then that eats into, the spring break and whatnot, eventually cuts into their summer. For us to do that, it would just have to be a memorandum of agreement that basically says teachers would recognize that when that happens, we would just have to have an agreement on what those days would look like. And so we would have to have an agreement on the level of synchronous and asynchronous instruction that the state would actually then constitute that and say, yes, because the state did kind of lay out some guidelines for school districts that were interested, and they're calling like a pilot of this, but we would just have to have a clear understanding on what those expectations are. If we were to use those as, if we exhausted the 5 vacation days and then we were to use those as virtual days.
So Tom, and Mike, you can follow up if this doesn't answer your question, but so snow days will still be called. And when a snow day is called, it's not a snow day only for those attending in person. If a snow day is called, it's district wide is what you're saying, right?
Yes.
And I'm walking through from my understanding. And the reason that would be is because the only way to avoid that would, for instance, if I'm a high school or middle school teacher, I always have to have everything with me, and I have to be prepared at a moment's notice when I'm used to teaching a class, having all the tools in my classroom at the school to do it from my home the next morning and everything. That's the reason why, right?
Yeah. Andy, that plays a big role in it. Plus, we have a contractual amount of days, which is 185 days with the teacher. So if we just said to them, you know what, you're working from home now, they would be then going up beyond 185 days that then we'd have to take back those days later on. But all the other units in our district, you know what I mean? It would, it's not that it's not doable.
That's what the question is. I think the source of the question anyways, because I've been hearing it on the radio and on the news that, a lot of districts are saying that there will be no more snow days, that when it's a snow day, it'll be a virtual day. And so I was wondering how that impacts teachers' contracts that have, it built in that if, the first 3 snow days that you don't have to report, the next 2 you have to report, but I don't know how it's built in specifically for our district, but certainly those days, at least some of them are typically completely off for teachers.
Yeah, so I can tell you, I believe 8 out of the 9 Oswego County school districts are doing regular snow days, which means if a snow day is called, which is usually a sunny day, even though I've only done that once, everybody would have a snow day, and there would be no virtual work. The teachers wouldn't work, the students wouldn't work, and we have 5 of those. I have been talking with Linda Dowler, and I know she's a spectator on this attendee right now. We've been talking about it. We're also going to have a conversation tomorrow, Lynn and I, because the bigger question is, what's a 2-hour delay going to look like? And so it's funny because Lynn just texted me a little while ago saying, that's my question. Because that's what we were talking about. Lynn and I were texting back and forth today. Connie Galvin and I had the conversation today because this is where it gets a little interesting. For instance, I was up this morning because it's November at 3:30 talking to our people, talking to Paul Brissett and talking to John Pierce because we have several CTE buses that take the high school kids over to BOCES, and I have to make that decision before 5 o'clock in the morning. So these are we have to be very clear. And tomorrow I want to blast something out to all the parents on what a 2-hour delay will look like. Because if we just say it's a 2-hour delay, they're going to say, okay, well, my elementary kids that normally get picked up, Christy, when do your kids get picked up? 7:30?
8:30.
Oh, they get picked up at 8:30. So now would that mean they're going to be picked up at 10:30? No, that's not the case. But it definitely would be the case for the kids going to CTE. So I'll have this all spelled out tomorrow. Luckily, in looking at the weather, I have the ability to do that because we're going to be we're out of the woods tomorrow.
But not to mention, what does it look like for the virtual students? Because like I said, my son, for instance, has a 9:30 and a 10:30 conference, but that's usually corresponds with the 9:30 ELA lesson for the in-class students and the 10:30 math lesson for the in-class students. So if they're not getting there until 10:30, then what does that look like for him? He no longer has a 9, you know what I mean?
So I can tell you that's one of the pieces we do know that won't change because the 2-hour delay for staff driving in, if it's not safe, that's still a lot later in the morning that they would have had to drive in than what their normal time would they be in their classroom. So those are, sorry, go ahead.
Right, but so that's what I'm saying. So they probably wouldn't be in school yet and prepared to have the 9:30 conference if they aren't even at school yet. You know what I mean? And not to mention if they're going to do it synchronously with the classroom, if the students aren't going to be there until 9:30 or 10 o'clock, then it'll probably be 10 or, you know what I mean? It's just, so it's not just the in-class students that it matters for. It matters for everybody. Anyone that's doing synchronous anyway, it certainly matters for them.
Yeah, no, we're going to be working. That's number one thing I have on my agenda for tomorrow, to have set ready to go out. We dodged the bullet this week because it's going to go up to 68 degrees for 4 days. But
well, for 2 weeks now, I think you're okay, Tom.
Right. But it is important we do this, because I got to tell you, that was kind of a kick in my gut when I was watching the TV this morning. There were some of the school districts that were in the bad zone there. They were 2 hour delay today. And I was wondering, how were they doing that? So we're going to address this. My goal is to get this out to all parents tomorrow.
And go ahead, Mike.
Tom, can I add to that? Being that, Janine's a contract worker, you're going to want to get that plan out to the contract agencies that have to meet that requirement as well, not just the parents.
Sure.
Right. And, obviously you're talking about delays, and I assume you're also in that envelope, including early dismissals. I mean, every day is an early dismissal right now. So what does that look like if it is early dismissal, or do you not even bring them in, or, that question too?
Well, absolutely. And we definitely have to make sure that we have the early dismissals set, ready to go. You know how before we would always have parents as an emergency, make sure you have somebody that could be there, because what just happened at one of the school districts in Oswego County on Friday, they had a case and they're elementary, and they did an emergency early dismissal to get those kids home, because they needed to be able to get the kid out because the kid was there, and they needed to be able to start their contact tracing and whatnot. So all of that, Christy, I want to be addressed. 2 hour delays, snow days, early dismissal, and how it impacts everybody. Because we have so many programs, special ed programs that are completely off-site. What is that for them? I want it all, one encompassing document that shows it all is my plan for tomorrow.
Yeah, and Tom, the only thing I add to that is just tomorrow, whenever you get it out, but there's a lot to consider, it sounds like. So I would say whatever time you need, because the only other topic I want to bring up, which speaks to this whole, like, just communicate at once and concisely and everything. So we know there was a communication about kind of GPA and ranking and everything, and then a change in that. But I think that last communication, there was a statement around doing some listening sessions, community forums, whatever it is. Are those, and it's fine if they're not, but are those scheduled yet?
No, they're not scheduled yet. I just talked today about that with Kristen Enright, and she's in the process to start planning all of those. So people have a ton of time to be able to plan, to be prepared to come to the series of those planning events.
Okay.
Right,
Perfect.
Tom, and to Andy's point, I hope that you will take additional time other than tomorrow if you need it. I mean, don't feel rushed. I certainly am not expecting to get anything tomorrow. And like you said, I think we're in the clear at least for a week or two in the 50s or 60s after tomorrow. So I'd rather it be, well thought out and not something you feel rushed on at all.
Well, it won't be rushed. If we can't have it by then it won't go out. But I know I've got Lynn, who's on this, asking me that today about the 2 hour delay. I've got my own administrators and my principals asking about it, and some parents that I spoke with today about that as well. So it is top priority. The goal is to get this out tomorrow. If it's not out tomorrow, it's because, like a Rubik's Cube, we're still looking at all the different parts. Like Mike added that really good point about the contractors. I mean, this has to be an all-encompassing document.
Any other topics from the board before we move to superintendent's report? All right, Mr. Colabufo, superintendent's report.
Okay, my superintendent report, again, I want to just give a massive shout out to the teachers and what they've been able to do. The high school teachers, and being fully remote is very difficult. And again, I say that this is excluding the high needs special ed kids who are in 5 days a week. But what the high school teachers have been able to do about never knowing those kids in person and then building those relationships through very engaging lessons. I talked to Connie Galvin. She raves about it. I have access. I've gone in. not like Big Brother, but I've gone in to be able to in Canvas to see what the principals are putting together. And I'm extremely impressed at what they've been able to do, at the light speed that they've been able to learn a new learning management system and be solid and consistent with it. At the elementary level, and again, that's middle school as well, pretty much same boat. At the elementary level, I've been extremely impressed that they're living in both worlds, right? So they've got their in-person students, they've got their, hybrid that when the kids are at home, connecting with them. And it's interesting because they're finding kind of their own niche. Some teachers are just amazing at using technology and getting the whole class involved at the same time. And then other teachers, they're not at that point yet, which is fine. When we hire teachers, we didn't hire them based on their distance learning abilities, but I will tell you their amazing ability to kind of pivot and go in a different direction, where most of the country is struggling to do that. They've done a wonderful job. I want to give a shout out to the bus drivers, to the teaching assistants that have been, taking the temperatures of the students. We have 40 devices that are, as we speak, they're I don't know if they're all done yet, but I just had a goals meeting with Adam, our head mechanic, and I've already talked to John Pierce. A lot of those devices are already put on. And so people are saying then why do we have the TA? Again, we have the TA, so if it shoots the temperature, the TA is walking the student back to their house with 100 degrees or more, and you can't leave the kid alone once they're there on the bus. The bus driver can't leave all the other kids alone. So my hat's off to the bus drivers. Food service has been amazing and what we've been able to do. I really want to publicly get this out there so people can hear me right now and spread the word. Because there was a waiver, and now that waiver, I was told, has been extended for the year with the free food for everybody. There are a lot of people that this year didn't fill the paperwork out for free and reduced lunch. That hurts us. That hurts us because Title I money is directly linked to free and reduced. So Laura Baum is the secretary for food service, has done a wonderful job reaching out to those individual families that were free and reduced last year to make sure they fill that out again. Even though they're getting the free food, because it's linked to our Title I allocations, and we all know that everything is being whacked, even though the governor didn't withhold the 20% allocations for our aid, state aid, it's totally coming. With New York City still shut down and boarded up, and the way the direction of our state just hasn't been able to drive revenue. Revenue drives the $46 million out of the $82 million budget. It's not going to look good. There's no magic wand that I see in the foreseeable future that's going to all of a sudden get us that money that we haven't gotten. So food service, I just want all the parents to know, please fill out that free and reduced paperwork. It's on our website because that drives our Title I allocations. Again, huge shout out to the administrators who are taking emails and phone calls, connecting with parents. A lot of parents that are frustrated, some 4, 5, 6 kids at home, some of them single parents, really struggling. We completely hear your frustration. We value the frustration. We are doing everything within the restraints that we have on us of bringing as many kids back that we can actually, bring back. I will say this, for those schools that are bringing back high school kids 1 or 2 days, they're not getting the best or any instruction for the other 3 or 4 days that the kids are home. I know this because we're starting to get calls from those districts on what is Canvas? How are you doing this? How did you build schedules to give teachers time for planning time to be able to do their remote learning? And that's not even the ones that have been shut down, even though lots in Onondaga County have been shut down. But I know this is a struggle right now, is to provide that remote instruction for their students. So again, I just want to give a shout out. Everyone's really trying their best, the administrators, district office staff, to get through this. It's a horrible situation. I can't even imagine what the toll this has taken on our students. Our special patrol officers have been outstanding. So we hired them for safety aspect of it. We never thought we'd be hiring them to do as many home visits. that they've been going to kids' houses where some kids have just been so depressed and shut down because of what's going on. Not just what's going on with it, lack of in-person, but the what's going on in households in our district, in all districts right now, as families are struggling right now. And there's a whole bunch of different dynamics going on. And those special patrol officers have been outstanding. School psychologists, counselors, they are working long, long days. So if there's anybody in the community that may think because there's really hardly any kids coming to the high school or to the middle school, I just want them to know our staff has never worked harder in doing what we're trying to accomplish right now. So that's it, Andy.
Well, thanks for the report, Tom. And I'll just say for all those parents that obviously we all want them in person, but if you have a student that isn't involved in the activities that we are able to put on, late at night or whatever, then that, frankly, as a parent, is one of the things you ought to be doing is get your kid plugged in somewhere, because at least it allows them to be involved and get out of the house. So we'll address. Yeah.
Andy, can I make one comment?
Sure.
Just to close the loop on the resolution, it's clearly noted that rather than Tom get hundreds of calls tomorrow and say, hey, board members want all the kids back in schools. The resolution is clearly in-person education without the mandates from the governor. So it's not that we're sitting there saying, hey, we think the administration should be putting kids back in school as is. So
right.
Just to clarify that, I sense getting off the phone and Tom would start getting calls like, hey, listen to your board members. We believe there should be in-person without the significant mandates from the state. So,
yep. Absolutely. And that's a good point, Tim, that, as a board, we 100% support the plan that administration has in effect now, because it is a result of the restrictions of our state government. Yeah,
exactly. And that's, I guess, what I want to clarify. Thank you.
Yep. Nope. Great point.
Hey, Tom. 60 seconds or less, layman's terms, the free lunch aspect that you hit upon. Elaborate in layman's terms the significance of the Title I aspect, so that you can paint the picture of why to the average Joe out there that this is something that really needs to be pursued and submitted and applied for.
Sure. So Title I grant, we are able to put a lot of salaries in our Title I grant. It could be up to, I believe when I was overseeing it was $1 million. That allocation is directly proportionate to the free and reduced population that you have. So it's additional monies that comes from the state to allow you to address a number of different things. And we're actually able to put teachers' salaries right into that, which then offsets it to Johnny Taxpayer.
Right. So in essence, the more people that apply for that program that are entitled to it officially, the more money we get.
Yep.
And the better off it is for the students.
Absolutely.
Right. That's the key. It's better off for the students to get this paperwork submitted. I don't know what it is. I'm talking out of complete ignorance on it, but that's the point, is if it benefits the students, especially in today's fiscally constrained times, let's see if we can't, get past this hurdle and get some of this stuff submitted, because that's the only way we're going to get around the roadblocks that have been placed in front of us by our politicians downstate.
Thank you, Michael.
Right. And we're just bleeding money left and right with mandates that are getting put on. We get $2 million. Now that's taken out of the budget or the aid, because now we're going to get $2 million of COVID earmarked money. It's not like we're getting it extra.
Yeah,
So,
and that's a great point that Christy makes, is we're bleeding money every place else. What can we
including
do to
here.
minimize the damage?
Yep.
right. And Tom, I just wanted to clarify earlier, when I was talking about the two different approaches that at least with respect to what I've seen with my two children / students, the younger students, obviously it's probably much harder to do the synchronous virtual, and so not just with respect to the teacher's ability or learning curve or whatnot, they also have to deal with, the hand that they've been dealt, which if you've got first, second kindergarten students, it may be very difficult to do synchronous education with them while they're at home.
Correct.
So,
Thanks, Christy.
All right, and with that, we will move into item H. I'll make a motion for item H1, the approval of the resolution authorizing participation in cooperative energy purchasing service, specifically for electric. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Loy. Open it up for discussion. And Maureen, anything you would want to add before we vote on this?
Hi, took me a minute to unmute myself. Yeah, this is the cooperative that we've been participating in for many, many years. They bid both the gas and the electric prices for large municipal group, including school districts and governments, and have always done really well with the pricing.
All right, any further discussion on this one? All right, being none, we'll move into the roll call vote. Mr. Martin is a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Loye?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
And Mr. Hoyt?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. And I'll make a motion for item H2, the approval of the resolution for natural gas cooperative purchasing. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Loye. Any discussion on this one? All right. Mr. Martin's a yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Loye?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
And Mr. Hoyt? Sorry, I missed you, Mr. Hoyt.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. And with that, I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Loye. Any discussion? Mr. Martin is a big old yes. Mrs. Fishman?
Yes.
Mrs. Nickerson?
Yes.
Mrs. Sundit?
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Mr. Loye?
Yes.
Mr. Patch?
Yes.
And Mr. Hoyt?
Definitely.
Thanks, everyone. If you haven't voted yet, make sure you vote tomorrow. And we'll see everyone 2 weeks from today on the 16th.
Take care.
Good night.
See you.